Stephen, welcome back to United TV. We're going to be talking about a few different things, but the first thing I want to say is in no way do myself and Kieran promote this as fact. We're very skeptical, but IndyCar posted something just a few minutes ago, which we're going to talk about. If if we see something coming out from Ornstein or Fabrizio or someone like that we think is like top tier, then we're kind of waiting for Andy Mitten to rubber stamp this or someone that we believe 100%. But IndyCar posted a story saying that on good authority, but they're quite vague. But again, I don't know where they're getting information from, but they are apparently owned by journalists. So this is something we'll discuss. And then this is going to go one way, isn't it? It's either going to go down the route of this gets confirmed and IndyCar overnight becomes a really good source, or it's going to be complete rubbish and then IndyCar will be pretty much discounted. But what's your thoughts? Like initially, what's your thoughts on the story? Because United have said they don't want to pay too much, and we'll get some people's opinions as well regarding this one. That I think a lot of people, just to say, a lot of people are saying they think it's going to be like it's going to be going to they're going to go to Manchester City. What are you thinking? Like Marps is the same thing. We'll try and get some comments as we go through this. But yeah, what's your initial reaction, Kieran? Because my initial reaction is always like trust, a mistrust, and suspicion. But
Yeah, no, thanks for having me first of all. Good to be here. I think, yeah, with Elliot Anderson, personally, I really like the story to be true in terms of I want the player. I'd love to see Elliot Anderson play for United. I think he's the right sort of profile for us. I think he's looked really good for Forest, and obviously he's done well for England when he's been called up as well. So he's clearly on the rise. Um, I always feel like, especially when transfer window is just around the corner, you always feel like these stories start to appear. We have been linked to him for a while, to be fair. It's not like this comes straight out of the blue, but yeah, there's always a little bit of kind of skepticism really when these sorts of stories come out and like it's kind of coming around the transfer season. Um, but as I said,
do you think
we've
with this one, like
yeah.
Man United say that Elliot Anderson's a top target, and they say that for a while. I mean, just because Manchester United make a bid first doesn't mean we're going to get him. So it
Mm.
could well be that Man United go, right, here's a bid. And I don't know how much they'd want to offer Nottingham Forest, for example. But I mean, Nottingham Forest, they're playing tonight. I mean, they could be lifting a European trophy as well. So they've got lots to play for. They could get Champions League football next season. And Anderson's not going to be cheap. Like if he got relegated, I think we could have a conversation. But we're talking about spending a phenomenal amount of money. But then Anderson might not even want to come to Man United. So is this like, if this was true, is this just a way of actually finding out whether there's any sort of deal? In which case, I don't mind that because it's still April. If you find out Anderson's 100% not going to come, then we can move on.
Yeah, I suppose it's a good way of doing it in terms of yeah, if he doesn't want to come, then we can kind of move on and look at other targets. And we have been linked to a few other targets. I'm sure we'll be linked to more as the transfer window goes on. So yeah, I suppose you could look at it that way. I think it would be a good amount of money, especially considering obviously he's, plays for a Premier League club, so that always makes it a bit more difficult. They're not a direct rival of ours, I suppose, but at the same time, like there's always that kind of English player tax as well that seems to get put on. Um, so yeah, we'd be talking a decent fee. But I suppose it is better to know kind of before you go all out for a player whether they A would genuinely want to come to you and B whether it's actually a realistic target to go for. Because obviously we've been here before, Rich, for a lot of transfer windows and kind of had long sagas that have ultimately not come to anything. We don't want another one of those if we can help it. So yeah, I suppose you could look at it that way, definitely.
Would you put him if you had to make a like top target list? Is he top of your targets? Because I think mentally I kind of moved on because my assumption was going to be I think he's going to go to City. I
Mm.
think, and I think Manchester United. They keep saying, they keep saying we still want him. We're still going to fight for him. Is this just a way of like, right? Here's 100 million. I think it's like probably be too much money, if I'm honest. And if Nottingham Forest say, well, I suppose I think Forest would accept a big offer, the same from any club, but it's down to Anderson, isn't it? As whether what he wants to do, and maybe it's a bit weird timing considering potentially things are happening. And I think maybe Man City are a bit hands off. So maybe United think, let's just like put a massive offer out there. who just like, I know they just got Manu, and maybe this is a way of also keeping Bruno Fernandes as well and trying to build quite quickly. Because if we want to actually progress, we have to try and buy the players City are trying to buy. And it might be that everyone thinks Anderson's going to go to City, but unless we actually try, I mean, it is a good thing if we do try.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm always of the opinion of if a player is not 100% set on going to the club that's obviously chasing him, then there's really no point in kind of spending the money. I always feel that you need to have the player also have the desire to come to your club. We've seen it before where, players have come to United who it's turned out that they're really not wanting to be there. It's just that, their agent or someone at the club they're at kind of pushed them out the door and said, listen, we've got enough money for you, you're going. And it never turns out well. You need to have someone who actually really is hungry to come. And if Elliot Anderson is, then that's great. And I think he is someone for me. You asked about is he a top target? I think I would put him up there because especially with Casemiro going, there is going to be a big hole in that midfield to fill. I think Agate, unfortunately, hasn't been the signing that we thought he was going to be and have the effect that we thought he was going to have. So I think you've got a big hole in midfield that needs to be filled. And I think someone like Anderson would be high on my list. So, obviously there's other targets out there as well.
Yeah, I
But
think he's like,
yeah.
Roy feels like one that we should try and go for. I'm just going to go for a few of the comments. Stephanie says, United hierarchy probably just don't want to lose face by not bidding. And I guess that, again, it's probably, it's down to the player anyway. So there is like player power in this one as well. Also, welcome to other people in the chat as well. I'll try and go through as many as this one. Gaz says, as soon as you see it's from IndyCar, you pretty much know it's yeah, that's what we kind of think as well. Like Bilal's saying the same sort of thing. That I guess, like, do you think who would be the confirmation of this? Like, would it be something along the lines of like David Ornstein saying something or Andy Mitten? Because in terms of this one, and Malps is saying we should all move on from Anderson. Yeah, Malps, I'm not. I don't think it's going to happen. I've said that a lot of times. I think it's like 99% City deal. The only thing I can think of is that there are sometimes deals where you think they're going to be done, and then they do end up going somewhere else. But to be honest, usually they end up going to City anyway, don't they? So this is players that we thought that we would be looking at, but able to do a few things. RK says Anderson, great all rounder, can do everything well in midfield, and yeah. Would you say that with this one there are a few options as well, and Barwadi is definitely a player also that's been talked about as well. So I will probably try and cover Barwadi quite soon at some point because apparently we're actually looking at meeting with Brady, which is a good thing as well. And say if United Side Dice says, I just don't understand if Jim's said no, then this is coming out. Did the Glazers somehow get involved? Who was it that said? Who was it that said that Manchester United would not spend that sort of price? Was that Jim Radcliffe? Because I mean, Jim Radcliffe's got a different idea to maybe how things are run by the Glazers because you do look at a few things, don't you? In terms, do you remember the amount of money we spent for players in the past, and you look at that and think, yeah, I think Ineos look at a bit more in terms of like what can we get for 50, 60, 70 million, and look at building a squad. Whereas the Glazers in the past did actually throw crazy money. I wouldn't actually mind Man United bidding if you think of how much money Liverpool spent, how much money we could spend. I'm
Mm.
not saying Anderson's a good all rounder and rare breed. No, it is good. It's good. Jim said if we got Anderson, we'll be lucky if we got two more players, never mind 5 to 7 players. Do you buy into that, Kieran? Do you think there's like a limited amount of money to spend? And do you look at it and think, like, if we don't, I will say with like Gaz, IndyCar did, IndyCar has put out a lot of like weird rubbish in the past, but I think it's changed ownership because it's put out a few things recently that are from like it's got some journalists. I think journalists bought it because of because of the site. So I don't think it's the IndyCar that posts complete nonsense a couple of years ago. It is owned by journalists. So again, this will be one where if it gets confirmed to be absolute rubbish, then it is. But Kate says he'd pay whatever it takes to get Anderson, and a lot of praise for Anderson. Is he worth over 100 million though? Anderson's the best passer, likely most effective player to sign this season, and he's going to take City to dominance again, says Kawin. Is this an indication of like do you think that if you don't get Anderson, let's assume not getting Anderson, do you look at it and think there's no good options, or do you think there's going to be like a few other options as well? I do agree with people like this. I'm agreeing with the credible sources that say he's going to go to City.
Yeah, I think there are other options out there. Definitely, I think the fact that obviously he's playing the Premier League and he's obviously had a very good season this season. Oh, well, Forest are obviously in the relegation battle, but in terms of his personal development, getting called up for England and kind of being highlighted as a kind of prospect for the future, I suppose, or someone that has been scouted by a lot of these top teams. On a personal note for him, he's done decently, and obviously he's on that trajectory that makes people excited about him. But I do think there's other options out there as well. Obviously, people have mentioned Tenali in the past. Obviously Buadi as well. So like, there's other options that we could go for. Um, I just think that Elliot Anderson, especially being a name from the Premier League that people know a bit more, he's the one that seems to have all the kind of people are stoking the fires for him at the moment. But what was it? A couple of weeks ago, it was Tushmeni, and I'm
Yeah,
sure there's
I
going to be
think
other
too
names
many,
floated about.
but I think too many is like honestly one of the best. If he actually leaves Real Madrid, I think he's one of the best options out there in terms of like ticking the boxes of experience. I mean, like too many. Someone was saying that some of his attributes, obviously like passing's on point, defensively very good, quite mobile. But I think also like one thing I hadn't really considered, too many is actually pretty decent in the air. So if you're looking at the things that Casemiro's got, you've got the leadership stuff as well. I don't know. I think if we're looking at just say City get Anderson, which I think most people think is going to be like where he goes, that is too many up there as being like one of the best signings you could get. Assuming he leaves Real Madrid. If he stays for Real Madrid, it's going to be again interesting comment here is going to be Cherky, Anderson, and Rodri. Then they're also linked to Enzo Fernandez. If Rodri doesn't leave, then that's probably too many off the table. I think that if Rodri goes to Real Madrid, that could be too many being available, possibly. But apparently, the too many story I saw, which is most likely, a most recent one, was if Real Madrid sign a midfielder, it depends where that midfielder is going to play, and depending on what too many actually wants to do. So if they sign a player that's going to be taking his position, then maybe he's gone. But I think too many is potentially on the table. Who do you want then as first signing, assuming we don't get Anderson? Because I'm assuming that as well.
Yeah, well, for me, I would be looking at Tchouaméni. I agree. I think when I heard we were linked with him, I thought, um, yeah, it's almost a bit of a dream signing, really. I think someone with that level of experience. He's still fairly young as well, but obviously in terms of playing at the highest level, playing not only for a club at the highest level, but for his country as well in big games. And I feel like he would almost be the kind of the glitz and the glamour signing really at this point. But I also like Tonali as well. I haven't seen
Can I
as
just pose
much.
like another question for you? That Ian says Anderson's a very good player, but not worth 120 million. And saying for that sort of money, we could sign. We could definitely sign a couple of players, possibly three, depending on how much they cost. Danny says, I just wondered if you agree with this sentiment. Like it says, there's lots of options, but Anderson's a level above. Like, do you agree with that at the moment?
Um, I don't know. I don't know about kind of a level above. I mean, I think he's definitely up there. Like no question about it. I think he's definitely up there with all the people we've been linked with. To be honest, I don't think there's too much between them. But I wouldn't necessarily put him kind of a level above them. But I think he's in the top targets list 100%. For sure. Um, but I think it, he looks a decent player, and he's a sort of player you feel like if you put better players around him, and he's not kind of in a position where he's in a relegation dogfight. You see, obviously, when he gets a chance for England, he looks pretty good, and actually looks like one of the most efficient players on the pitch when he plays for England. So that's a good sign that when he does have better quality players around him, he can step up to that, which is a really good sign in terms of if we were to go for him or if other clubs were to go for him. So yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously really good signs with Anderson, but
Yeah,
I wouldn't necessarily say like a complete level above, but I think he's definitely up there.
I think as I was saying, Anderson and Maynard would be a good match, both for rounders. Yeah, do you look at? Because I think the way I've been looking at midfield players recently over the last few days is like with the Kobe Mainoo signing his contract, which is obviously big news. I was thinking which players go alongside him. Well, where do you think Maynoo? Like, if you're looking at Maynoo, do you think you'd look at? Because this is the conversations people have been having. So, would you be looking at like both, like say all rounders in terms of like good defensively? Because I saw a few stats you might be interested in. Someone posted them actually earlier today. One of them was that Koemani's pass completion rate is close to 90%. He's actually won possession back for Man United more than any other player since he's come back into the team.
Mm.
So good defensive stats, good passing stats. Passing into the final third, I think he's up there as well in terms of like one of the best in the team. So he is doing well on both sides of the pitch. The question is going to be: where do you want to see Koemani play next season? Like, do you want to see him play further forward? Do you want to see him like more defensive, or do you like the idea of having like two eights that maybe they can both kind of alternate attacking and defending? Or how do you, or what's your thoughts?
I mean, I think yeah, Mainoo's a sort of player that, as we've seen in the past, that kind of can do both sides of it. Obviously, we've recently, as you mentioned, with him, kind of winning the ball back and being, especially in that Brentford game, it's at times dribbling out of his own box, which is pretty impressive. But he's also someone that can score goals as well, as we've seen in previous seasons. So he's got the ability to do both. I think for me, I think he plays better when he is involved in the attacks. I think the one thing that I have seen from Mainu at times is in transitions when we are trying to get back and defend, he's sometimes a little bit slow to get back in. But when he does get back in, he usually recovers the ball. But there are some times where you feel like he's not as quick to get back on transitions. And obviously having someone in there next to him that's a bit more mobile. Not saying that Manu isn't
Yeah,
mobile, but I think
would you like Belieber? Like, I know we talked about Belieber loads last season.
mm,
Do you look at it and go that I think if I was going to guess the first signing, because when I saw the story this morning and they said they were going to talk about it, my first reaction was we're going to read about Belieber offer. That's what I just think is going to happen. And if I had to put a bet on it, I'd be betting on Belieber, and then the rest of the money I'd be putting on Angela Stiller because that's what I'm guessing at the moment. That I don't believe. I just to say to a few people that joined recently, I'm not believing we submitted a bid. We're just discussing the story. I still think Belieber and Angela Stiller are my two most likely signings in terms of which ones we're looking at.
mm. Uh, that's it. I mean, obviously, but Belieber was the kind of first guy we talked about really in terms of when we were thinking about people we could bolster our midfield options with. And actually, since we got linked to him, his form dipped for Brighton. I think I'm not sure if he had injuries as well, but I know his form kind of dipped a little bit. Um, but obviously, pre that, I actually thought he was the number one candidate. He was the one that everyone was talking about. The fact that his profile would fit and he'd be a kind of perfect replacement in there for Casemiro. But I don't know. I think whilst I think he's still on the table, I don't know whether he's still kind of the number one target at the moment. But then again, I think with transfer stories, it's very hard to predict. There's a lot of times where the person that we end up signing doesn't get talked about until deep into the transfer window, and all these targets that we're talking about now, like Anderson or Tonali or these guys, we might not end up signing, and we might sign someone we haven't even talked about. So it's difficult to predict. But I mean, I think Baleba pre this season, I think was absolutely the number one target that everyone was talking about. And obviously, I think some of his form this season has maybe curtailed that a little bit. But I think I suppose he's up
Do
there
you
again.
think? I think Man United just look at that maybe what they're seeing is like where he's going to play in a couple of years, and maybe they're looking instead of. I think they're just looking at what they think he can do instead of form. I was going to say hi to Tyrone, hi to Isabet as well, and he said again. With a bet, I'm not 100% sure that this is 100% happening, but if it is happening, then it's good to see Man United being proactive. Even if Anderson laughs at it and decides says no, I'm going to City. At least they've kind of been in the conversation. Yeah, Danny B's agreeing with me, saying Belieber's 70% through the door. Yeah, you said, I think you said 80 last time, didn't you, Danny? It's something like that, isn't it? Big up to you, Niall, as well. Thanks for that, Niall. Appreciate that. So if Belieber's like 70 million, then how much must Mainoo be worth? I guess based on the stream this afternoon, Mainoo's probably worth between like a lot more than that or a lot less than that, depending on how you rate him. So it's honestly very um, difficult to judge. Malps is like dismissing Belieber, saying no one else is after him. Do you think no one else is after Belieber because Man United have pretty much made it certain? No, they pretty much made it known they want him, and it looks like it looks like no one else is interested. So I think the fact no other club's interested in Belieber, everybody knows that Man United want to buy him, don't they? That everybody knows Man United want to buy Belieber, so it's not really worth other clubs going for.
Yeah, maybe it could be. I suppose yeah, if they feel like Belabor as well, if they have information that they feel like he's kind of got us on his mind, um, then it's going to be difficult to persuade him. Otherwise, obviously, for Brighton and their point of view, it's all about the money and who offers the most money. To be fair, but um, yeah, I think if other clubs are aware that he has his heart set on us, let's say, I'm not saying that's the truth, but let's say it is, for argument's sake, then probably they would step down and not go for him because you're just wasting your time at that point, really.
Do you find also that like Gaz made a really good comment and he says whoever is currently in form, and you got Wharton or Belieber last season, and you've got Anderson this season, and I think you could put other names in there as well. Is that whoever's in good form, people start talking 100 million, and probably 12 months ago. Okay, I can't remember when we started talking about Anderson, but I think it was we talked about Anderson as being potentially like a cheap option 12 months ago. And we thought, he had a decent season, but no one was talking about him as a £100 million player. So it's literally like these prices seem to like shoot up crazy. So like Danny's saying paying 70 for Belieber would be stupid. But this time last summer, people were actually no, towards the end of the summer, people were quite happy to throw 100 million at Belieber. So things change. Also, I think this is the reason why nobody's actually looking at Belieber because Belieber says he wants to join Man United. So it's the same situation as we've seen in previous transfers. Like, if a player wants the club, there's literally no point in trying to get him. And I always say this as well. I don't agree on any of the transfer figures out so far. So do you agree that these players are going to cost like 100 million, or do you think this is just going to be again kind of speculation about just being thrown around? Because we always see crazy numbers at this stage of the transfer window.
Yeah, I mean, it's always just speculation, in my opinion. I think early doors in the transfer window, it's not just the clubs, but obviously, media outlets and things like that. Obviously, the bigger the number, the more kind of impressive the story, I suppose, and the more kind of shocking the story, really. So I think a lot of the kind of figures that get spouted out at this point in time, especially when it is really just all about kind of tip offs and sources here, there, and everywhere. Realistically, until a formal bid's been put in or the players sign on the dotted line, no one really knows what the actual price is. So, yeah, I think as we know around this sort of time, when the transfer window's kind of coming up, there's all these little stories that start to appear and figures get put on social media, but ultimately most of them turn out to be not accurate or at least kind of not fully accurate anyway. So yeah, always take it with a pinch of salt, really. But there's always people who've kind of got the interest in either getting more kind of impressions on their posts or maybe even players and agents using things to get new contracts and stuff like that. So that
Yeah,
can
that's what I
happen,
think
I
about
suppose.
too many. I think with too many that Real Madrid actually don't want him to leave. Jeff's got a comment here saying, what really gets him is we end up paying 10 to 20 million more than everybody else pays for their players. So I'm going to say that I don't think we have done over the last no last summer. I don't think we did. So I think we did in the past, but I think if you look at last summer, I don't think we have overpaid. Like every player we bought last season, I don't think we played Manchester tax. I don't think it's we have in the past, but I don't think we did it for Cunha. I don't think we did it from Wemo, Lamans, we didn't, and I don't think we did it for Benjamin Sesko. I think Sesko was probably the most expensive, but if you consider how much Ekitike went for, Walter Maida, Gyökeres, Isak, I think that Sesko went for kind of like what it cost. That I don't think he was an exceptionally expensive. I don't think he was above market value, and I think the other players were there or thereabouts. Like, if you got Alanga going for 60 million and you got Gittins going for about 60, I don't think that I don't think that we overpaid. If Anderson goes to Man United or City, I think it's a crazy amount of money, but someone will pay a crazy amount of money. I don't think Tonali goes for 100. So again, I'll just say this: I don't think we overpaid under Ineos, but maybe you could say Sesko, maybe Euro was a bit higher than expected, but I don't think they weren't kind of like crazy. Like there wasn't crazy deals out there, was there?
No, I mean,
Firstly,
I
welcome
think
to
probably,
Showbound as well. Welcome to the channel.
yeah, no, I think ultimately, when you look at the transfer window now compared to what it was like, kind of 10, 15, 20 years ago, it's obviously night and day in terms of the money we're talking. But at the same time, the market is always been inflated. I feel like I haven't there hasn't been a recent season where players have been going for normal prices. And I think, especially if you look at the players we bought, obviously Benjamin Sesko was one of the highest rated strikers in Europe, and obviously he had other big clubs going after him, so it was always going to be difficult to get him for a kind of bargain price. Obviously, in Buemo, played for Brentford for a few seasons and was consistently decent for them. Probably underselling it, very good for Brentford, I should say, and obviously was one of the highest rated players outside the so-called Big Six in the Premier League, as he was never going to be
Yeah.
cheap. And then
Do you think
obviously
this, Karen,
Mateus
like
Cunha as
in
well.
terms of Man United tax and Where's the Bet says the point is City can get it for 90 million because they're more successful. And I think Manchester United might have to pay they might have to pay him more salary. So the transfer fee would surely be about the same, wouldn't it? But we might have to give him a better contract, possibly to try and convince him. I thought we did that strategy with Sancho. Like Sancho got a really high contract, and I think that's the reason we did that. I think we did that because we wanted to make sure we got him. So if we are looking for trying to do, if we're trying to do a deal with some players that may be linked to other clubs, we might have to go down that route, which I don't really mind in this instance because I don't think Anderson's going to be on insane money. He's on about 100k at Forest, I believe. I think it's something like that, and I think the offer on the table apparently from Man City was about 200. So I don't know, would you be happy if Man United spent 250, 300k a week on Anderson? I mean, it's obviously a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, I always am a little bit worried when you kind of you end up like putting sweeteners in the contract and bumping up their
You kind of
salaries,
it's
like
kind of like
just.
what happens though, isn't it? It's like why do you join Manchester
Mm,
United in the 90s or 2000s? Then one of them is that you're going to win trophies, but also Manchester United were paying as much as any other club. The reason you join
yeah.
Chelsea is presumably because you get a long contract, so you're going to
Mm,
get guaranteed money. But you join City to win trophies. You join Arsenal to try and win trophies, but you join City to win
mm,
trophies. You join Manchester United at the moment, probably to get a high salary, but I think United need to make a couple of statement signings. It's almost like you have to throw money at it in the short term to bridge the gap. I'm just trying to think how City did it when they spent money. They bought a lot of players over like a 2 or 3 year period to close the gap. So the only way Manchester United get these sort of deals done, I think, is to make Anderson an offer which is like financially crazy, probably.
mm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
look at this.
yeah, and
This is why
yeah,
players are at
sure.
City. Like this is. I'm not saying we should do it this
Mm.
big, but you kind of have to do that, don't you?
Well, I mean, only it is true that in the end, these players and their agents actually a lot of the time. will demand these fees because ultimately
Because they
they
shouldn't get
know
them,
their
can they?
worth.
It,
Exactly, they know their worth. Elliot Anderson's agents. If I don't know exactly how his his kind
can you
of, I
imagine being
suppose,
Elliot
staff and
Anderson's
people.
agent at this point in time,
Yeah,
where Manchester United say you're the top target, Manchester City want you? It's literally probably like thinking, "Wow, we're going to start printing some cash." Like, so I don't know what his
exactly.
demand's going to be, but if he gets offered 200k by City, I think he should say no because 200k is what Spurs pay kind of Gallagher. And Anderson should be like looking at that, thinking, "Hang on, this guy gets this salary. He should be on significantly more than him."
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like if you look at the Ronaldo transfer a couple of years ago when he came back to us, obviously the big story before the kind of announcement was made was that he was going to go to City. Now, how much of that story was real and how much of that story was his agent Jorge Mendes kind of putting that in as a bit of like, we know how kind of we know how big of a thing this would be for United fans if Ronaldo went to City. Are you going to make that move and actually pay the money and bring him in? And obviously United did. So I don't know, to be honest, how much that affected it, but those are the sorts of things where that's how deals could potentially be, kind of manipulated a little bit, or
Yeah.
the deal could
Can
be
you see the
sweetened a
live
little bit.
chat?
So no, I can't see the chat.
Is
No,
there
I've
is there
turned it
any way
off.
of you checking the live chat? Because I wanted to ask you a question, but if I put the
Oh yeah,
question
yeah.
on screen, it'll literally cover you completely. So you're
All right, okay. No,
but
yeah, sorry, I
essentially,
was just.
if you're looking at building your midfield and you're assuming that maybe Man United are going to spend 200 million, there's a massive list. So if you can find this comment, it's kind of like how would you construct your midfield from that? Assuming that if you're going to buy Anderson for 100 million, what are you going to go to get alongside him? Or if you don't want to buy Anderson, who would you get instead?
Um, I think. I mean, yeah, I would say. Just trying to find the question. But no, I would say, and if we didn't get Anderson, I mean, again, I do think you make the point about too many. I do think that there is a potential for that just to be a kind of him to get a new contract at Real Madrid type thing. But I think he's someone I'd definitely love to see in a Man United shirt. I really rate Tonali as well. So I'd say those two would be the two that if we didn't get Anderson, I'd be looking at, to be honest. Outside of that, um, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, because a lot of the people we've been linked to, obviously they look. I can't say I've watched a huge amount of them. They look all right on YouTube compilations as most players do, but because I haven't watched them week in week out, or at least kind of watched full
Yeah, do you think with
games
the Premier League
of them
option though, there's
playing.
like a few good options there. Like Joe Gomez is quite cheap, and you could say
Yeah.
that maybe Angela still has been linked loads. He's not that expensive. You got Hackney in the player of the season for the championship. So, I mean, I did see something this morning where I think I talked about Hackney yesterday morning, and someone left a comment on the video saying they don't want any championship players. But my argument is going to be that if Man United buy Hackney for 30 million, a year Premier League experience, he's probably going to be like 50 million. Like just years Premier League
Mm,
experience. So if you go to if Hayden Hackney goes to Forest and Forest do okay, Hayden Hackney will be 50 million next season. And if he went to Brighton, he'd probably be even more because Brighton want to cash in. But no, my reasoning was that if United did get Anderson, for example, or we get too many, you probably got to compromise a little bit. I think if Man United don't get Anderson and they say, right, there's no way Anderson's going, or Anderson laughs at the offer, or if they have made an offer, then I think the next port of call for Manchester United might well be Tonali. Whether we like it or not, it feels a
mm.
bit like he might be the next one they go for.
Yeah, no, and I really like Tonali. To be fair, I think obviously there was a period where he was out for Newcastle for obviously getting his stuff about, was it the gambling stuff? Well, he had problems off the field, and I think that might have affected kind of his, or yeah, stunted his kind of progression at Newcastle a little bit, having that period out. But I think he's a good player. I think he's a really good player, and I think again he's someone who, you know, if if you put him in that United team, I think he would step up a level. But I think as well, I think someone that I've looked at, we deserve a better list, and actually someone that I missed out was Wharton from Palace. I actually really like Wharton as well. Um, so again, he'd be someone that potentially, if we could get him again, I think it'd be similar to an Anderson situation where I think he'd be a pretty penny, to be fair. But I think Wharton looks a really, really good player as well. So yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of mouth-watering options out there, but yeah, it's difficult to call at this point. But I think for me, I think probably if I had to pick, Anderson would be the player that I'd go for. But yeah, there's a lot of other players around him that look pretty good to me.
I was looking at this and thinking that Cake said, "I'm putting a attempted bid for Anderson. Like, it's that what's the worst that you can do? Like, if you want to try and buy a player, you have to make an offer and see what happens. If the player doesn't want to join, then, I mean, if Manchester United did nothing, fans would be going right. At least you've got to try. But I think that in terms of like the salaries, I think we're only paying a couple of players over £200,000 a week, and the reason I think why we've been reducing our wage bill, it's only going to make sense if we actually look at, you know, so I was like saying, Gaz, you might be joking, but it's not as big a joke as people think, is it? That if Hackney has a good season in the Premier League, it will be a conversation where people will say 50, 60, 70. Like the prices can go crazy if you prove that you can do quite well in the Premier League. But I think that for me that no one would have talked about spending 100 million on Anderson a year ago. But if United don't, then I think you can get other good options. I think one thing that a few people, just to summarize a few comments I read, is that if you did go for an Anderson deal or a Tonali deal, and again, Tonali kind of divides opinion a little bit. I think the situation would probably be that you have to be mindful that you can't spend. I don't know. No one thinks we can spend £100 million per player. We all think that you're going to spend, a big on one player, and then you're going to get some better value options. Put it that way. I don't really like to say cheap because people think we're kind of like scraping the barrel. I think Hayden Hackney is actually a very sensible price.
Hmm. Yeah, I suppose it depends what other positions we're going to prioritise, and also what the budget is. Obviously, Champions League qualification will help the budget as well, so that's something we can factor in. Unfortunately, we're not going to get any money from winning any trophies this year, but yeah, at least that Champions League qualification will help. And obviously, you'd hope it means that there'll be other players around Europe looking at United, thinking, back in the Champions League, they're going in the right direction. Um, so that does help our prospects, but at the same time, there's other positions on the pitch that I feel like it would be good to strengthen. So that'd be interesting to see how our scouts and our transfer team, as it were, will start to prioritise that in the summer. But I think the midfield with Casemiro going is obviously a big talking point. But I think there are other positions as well. So who knows? Maybe they decide actually there's players in other positions, other prospects that they want that cost a little bit more, and they might have to go for a bit more of a kind of quote budget option in the midfield. But it'd be obviously kind of perfect if we could get our number one targets in all positions. But it feels like it's a bit of a pipe dream, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And so, do you feel like we should have done a couple of things in January? Because I remember when like Gaz won't know this because the channel kind of restarted recently, but we did talk about Garner as a cheap option, and the reason why everybody's talking about £30 million is because Spurs were looking at Garner. We were having conversations as a group ourselves, looking at maybe. I think we looked at maybe who's the guy that's in the Saudi Pro League that used to play for Wolves? Was that Ruben Neves? And
Mm.
we're looking at him as an option. We're looking at Gallagher as well. And we looked at Garner because Spurs looked at Garner and the price they were told was 30 million. And I thought 30 million, like, get the deal done. That would have been a good deal to do in January. We might already have locked up Champions League football, and possibly we might have been a bit closer as well. I would say move for Garner. Oh, Garner. I was thinking of like Hackney, but I think
Mm.
Garner was one that we shouldn't have let him go, to be honest. That was a bit of a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, it always feels like a mistake, and you don't know what's going to happen kind of 5, 10 years down the line. Obviously, he's done all right since he's left, and obviously, good luck to him as well, being a United Academy product. It's good to see those players do well, especially when you've kind of watched them progress, watched their debut, and it's kind of nice to see those players actually thrive. Obviously, you'd want them to thrive playing for United, but at the same time, it is kind of nice from my point of view. When you see these academy players go off and do good things, as long as they don't score against us, that's the main thing.
Yeah. Do you know, like with
Yeah,
Hackney as an example, like the comment here saying that Lamon's got signed from a league that is a lot lower than the Premier League. He's done really well. So if you're looking at other players that potentially could be bought from leagues that aren't as good as Manchester United, maybe United got a little bit of credit. But are you still suspicious that we're going to somehow mess this up? Because there seems to be so many options out there that when you're looking at which midfielders to go for, there's so many options out there. It feels a bit like if Man United mess up this transfer window, then they've only got themselves to blame because there's so many options you can buy for. Actually, forget Anderson about 100 million. There's a lot of good options that aren't crazy money. Like Wharton could be not too unreasonable. You got a Gume, you got Hackney, you've got maybe Alex Scott as another player that you're looking at as well.
yeah. I mean, I do think sometimes there's kind of too many cooks spoil the broth, but you have to remember that this is just media speculation at the moment. I'm sure, well, I'd hope so anyway, that the backroom staff at United and the people that are going to be in charge of the recruitment this summer will have their shortlist that's a lot more defined than what we're seeing, kind of on social media and in news reports. I think there's always going to be 20, 30 players linked with United at any one time during the transfer window, but actually probably 90% of those links are not really founded in much truth. So the hope is that the people doing the recruitment behind the scenes have very clear defined targets, and that they're working on those targets in some capacity, probably even in the lead up of the transfer window. Obviously you can't tap people up and stuff, but in terms of actually really setting our stall out and having a clear plan, and if that plan doesn't work out, having another plan B, plan C of how we're going to progress and get these signings in. Because I think getting the signings in sooner rather than later and having them in before, let's say, pre-season tours and things like
I
that,
think yeah, I think United are hoping to
is very
get something
beneficial.
before the World Cup. How much would you? Question for you: how much would you pay for Anderson? Imagine imagine there's in some sort of dream world that Anderson goes. Actually, I'm kind of interested, and Nottingham Forest then say, right, we want this much money, and it's going to obviously be quite a lot. What's your top end?
Um, on Elliot Anderson,
Yeah, what's your top price? Because
uh,
people got a bit crazy about Belieber. I just want to say what you
hmm,
draw the line, because I'm guessing that if you say like 100 and they go, what about 105? If they say 105 gets the deal done, it's quite tricky, isn't it? Because it
well,
can be.
that's the thing. Is like in the end, is that's kind of the whole bartering. It's like uh, I think personally, in reality, Forest are going to ask for close. I think Forest are going to ask for between 80 and 100 million. That's what they're going to ask for. Um, Personally, I wouldn't really want to go over the 80 million mark for him. To be honest, um, I think he's a decent player. Um, I think he's someone who could potentially become a very, very good player for the team that he ultimately goes to. But I know, and I think it's a good point, obviously, that the Irish pit terrier makes there is that, only if you look at some of the other midfielders that have gone and the price they went for, like a Declan Rice, maybe 80 million is too low for the top end. But I just feel like I don't know. There's something in me that feels like, as much as I do like Anderson and feel like he would be my number one target, I feel like anything over kind of that 80 million mark, I just feel like it is too much at that
Yeah,
point. But
Danny B says 100, like 100 million for him,
mm,
and Danny says that for him it's like 100, like say 200 million spend on midfielders, and he'd divide it up how he accordingly to what he wants. I think if you looked at last season. I think, 200 million makes sense. Like if you're looking at, say, 200 million, but you've got three players, And it's like if you spend quite a lot on one player, you can spend a bit less on others, can't you? So it's not a problem regarding this one. It's like if Anderson cost a bit more, you've got options that cost a little bit less. I mean, the person that's going to be standing on that's going to be sort of sat on the bench for more often than not, while Anderson's in your team, you're not going to spend £100 million on that guy anyway. Kate's got a question for you saying, who's your first choice midfielder for United to sign? Like in terms of if you're going to pick a signing, that I know you said you like Wharton, and
Mm,
instantly somebody says in the chat that they don't really rate him, but
mm,
it's just how it is.
mm.
Well, is Tonali up there?
Yeah, I mean, I think my three would be Tchouaméni, Anderson, and Tonali. Those would be my three that I think
Yeah, yeah,
any one
that
of them.
you got expensive taste.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of the kind of number one player, like if I could, if money didn't exist, let's say money's no object, um, and like literally it was just about taking a player from one team and just sticking them in your team, no strings attached, whatever, nothing, no
Yeah,
money, whatever, then probably I would look at to be honest, I'd probably go for Tchouaméni, to be honest, out of all of those. But I think he's more of the kind of glitz and glamour signing that I think's most likely to be a new contract situation, um, as we spoke about earlier. I think out of Anderson and Tonali, I'd probably go with Anderson, to be honest. Um, so I think from that point of view, my kind of unrealistic one out of those three, but probably my favorite one, if I could choose any of them, would probably be Tchouaméni. But I think in terms of those three would be my top three. But the more realistic one would be Anderson, in my opinion. So I think Tonali is brilliant as well. But I would say, yeah, those Tchouaméni and Anderson would be the kind of unrealistic, but the one I'd want more. But the realist Anderson's more realistic, and I feel
yeah.
like we could actually do
Too
that deal.
many feels a bit like too many feels like one of those signings that's linked to Man United, and you look at it and go, okay, he's really good, and then Real Madrid want to keep him. There's a contract offer, etc., etc. There's like so many things with too many, which makes me think it's not a feasible deal. Like Real Madrid don't want to sell him, but too many apparently may want to leave. I think too many wants assurances over this what's happening, and I don't think too many wants to sign a contract if he thinks he's going to be a centre back. Like if he thinks someone's going to come in and take his CDM position, I think he's going to be maybe looking to go somewhere elsewhere. So that's at the back of my mind. But yeah, it could be interesting. But Anderson's still at too many for Malp, so that would probably be at the top end of that price as well. So top end of that one. Wizardbet said, could this Anderson news be agents trying to nudge City into making an offer? I'm just trying to think of it could be. It could be. I thought City had actually tried to agree because normally what happens first is clubs try to go to players. So it seems strange that it would be around this sort of way. But yeah, I don't know. I'll go for a few comments as well because people were talking about this one and saying if big money comes in for Anderson, he's gone 100%. I think he is gone, isn't he? I know Stephanie said yesterday, and a couple of people have suggested that. Do you think there's any chance, as remote as it sounds, any chance that Anderson stays at Forest? Like, is there like, if they get Champions League football next season? I don't know. It feels unlikely because I think the offers would be coming in, and they might find it hard to refuse.
Yeah, I think there's always a potential chance. You know, we have seen it with players before where everyone's expected them to get that big move and it never happens. I mean, obviously the famous one, Wilfred Zaha at Palace. I think everyone expected him to kind of move every transfer window. It was like, where's Zaha going to end up? And in the end, he didn't go to another Premier League club. He ended up going to Galatasaray and things in the end. So, you know, it's never a done deal with these players. Obviously, a lot of the signs would point to Anderson moving to a quote unquote bigger club, I suppose, or a club that's willing to pay a lot more money and maybe kind of plays in the Champions League, because he is that sort of player who's doing well and is on a high trajectory at the moment. So it's always difficult when you're a club like Forest to keep those players as much as they are a big club in England in terms of historically a big club. And obviously, they've got very good European standing, but right now, um, I suppose if they were to win, they're in the is it the Europa League they're in?
Yeah,
No,
they're
I
in
think they're
Europa, so
Aston Villa
if they
right
win
now.
it, they go into the Champions League, wouldn't they?
Yeah, so if they did win that competition, which would be actually, I mean, quite amazing to see, really, in terms of
Because
Nottingham
that's
Forest
the funny
European
thing about
history.
Forest is that if you go back a few weeks, the funny thing about Nottingham Forest is they could have potentially been relegated, and then you fast forward a couple of weeks, they get a couple of wins, and now they look safe. And they could be in the Champions League. So
Mm,
the kind of trajectory could have changed massively. So I was just going to say, and one thing that Tyrone's actually answering the question that I was just about to ask. My question was going to be: there's all this talk about Manchester United, all this talk about Premier League options, and like Tyrone has like guessed my next question somehow. I don't know. That is like bizarre because I was thinking in my mind. I put a poll in the comments, and I was about to ask you this question. And are we completely ruling out other teams? Because the fact that it's Manchester United and Manchester City, there's some big teams out there. Like we talked about Real Madrid a little bit, but Bayern Munich have got a phenomenal team at the moment,
mm,
and there's definitely they got some British quality players in there as well. It would be a powerhouse of Europe as well, one of the famous like big teams as well. Um,
mm.
do you think this is like something that again they tried to buy Florian Wirtz last season, and they would have spent the same amount of money as Liverpool, but that move was blocked because the Bundesliga teams do not want to sell to Bayern Munich because they're so dominant. So maybe again, this is kind of me like just to put a different angle on it. It does seem to be that possibly looking at Elise, looking at Harry Kane, it feels like Bayern Munich are actually forced to look outside of the Bundesliga for quality players because Bundesliga teams don't want to strengthen an already dominant team.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's true in terms of firstly, obviously other clubs around Europe. There's a lot of, especially now with you've got players like Bellingham, obviously Rashford in Barcelona. It's a lot more commonplace for kind of British players to go abroad, and it feels like
I
it's
was
something
I
that's
was thinking
happening a
like
lot more.
Bayern Munich have got money,
Harry Kane, yeah.
but German teams won't sell to Bayern Munich. Like we saw them, like they said, well, Wirtz cannot go to Bayern Munich, and they kind of pushed the deal towards Liverpool. So I'm just wondering if that's kind of forcing Bayern Munich's hand. The fact they've actually signed two of the best players came from Premier League teams. I'm just wondering whether they might look at Anderson as well, because I don't think there's any players in Italy that would be comparable. I can't think there's like targets in Spain that would really be a similar profile either, particularly sort of this advanced. So that's what that was kind of like what I was thinking.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see. But obviously, the more clubs that are in the mix for him, probably the higher his price is going to get pushed up as well. So, yeah, that's going to be interesting. But I think, yeah, it's a good point in terms of we have to see what happens with Forest. As obviously, we deserve better mentioned
Anderson's
there.
23. Like Wizard Bet says, is Forrester in the Champions League next season? He said Anderson should stay one more season. It would be difficult. I suppose the one thing I would say in Anderson's favour is, well, he's probably going to double his money at least if he goes to a different club. So that must be a massive. There's a huge amount of money at stake in terms of salary. I don't know whether he's going to get a bumper deal if he does well and sit at Nottingham Forest. But I don't know. It would be difficult to not move, wouldn't it? Given how much is likely to earn at these two clubs.
No, that's the thing. I think it's in the end it all comes down to yeah the money factor with these sorts of things. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think. Do you think Forest want to sell him? Because I get the feeling that clubs tend to want to cash in.
Yeah, I think that I think it's a sort of thing where I'm sure, like, if you asked kind of officials at Forest, um, and people at the club, and obviously, um, the players around him and everyone around the club, they would say they'd want to keep him because they want to keep their best players. But ultimately, with these sorts of players, it's always kind of the offer you can't refuse always comes on the table at some point, and more often than not, the offer gets taken. I mean, the amount of times where managers will do press conferences saying this player's not for sale. We don't want to sell this player.
I know that's what
And
they're
then,
saying.
you know,
Can I like play devil's advocate as well? Do you think there's any sort of said? Actually, this is a good question. Do you think United have had encouragement from Anderson's camp, or are we bidding blind? Honestly, Cake, I don't know. It's
mm,
We'll have to see if there's any sort of like follow up from this as well. But do you also think in terms of this that Anderson at the moment is probably on everybody's shortlist as being the best target? Okay, but in 12 months' time, that might not be the case. In 12 months' time, can you imagine if he stays at Forest and Forest get dumped out the Champions League and there's a dip in form and say, look, this is what I was going to say. Gaz is like preempt. Am I becoming like too predictable? Because Gaz is like preempting my next question. Where I was going to say, what happens if Anderson has a season where I don't know for whatever reason, if he picks up an injury or Forest struggle, or for whatever reason, like Forest have to do Champions League football plus the Premier League, and they end up being in a relegation fight or worse, and Anderson does badly. Are there going to be Manchester United fans like if we bought him or if we didn't buy him, going actually, Anderson, he's a £50 million player. We dodged the bullet. We should buy Alex Scott. Like he's like £100 million at least. So, do you feel that I'm kind of laughing as I say it because it feels a bit like every single year, one player will be has doubled in value, and a player that people would have dropped £100 million on less than a year ago, they're now saying he's pretty much done. But the guy's 21 or 22. It makes me laugh because it's so funny how things change so quickly.
oh yeah, no, that's football. I mean, that's like how
Yeah,
quickly.
to be fair, Anderson hasn't. He's been quite consistent for longer, but
Mm,
I think the point still stands that what if he picks up a knock and people go, "Oh, he's not the same player." It's like he's 50
yeah.
million.
Well, that's it. I mean, there's always players that are kind of the flavour of the month, and people think are going to be the big player in that particular transfer window, and then yeah, it just ends up kind of deals fall through and things don't happen, and obviously as you mentioned, injuries and stuff. But yeah, it's always really interesting to see those sorts of things where players massively high rated, and then 3 years down the line they're struggling to get a game at whatever club they're at. But that's how quickly things can change in football when things don't. But yeah, I think you're right. I think obviously people in the comments as well mentioned the consistency of Anderson and his performance. That's not necessarily to say that he wouldn't end up kind of losing some of his form, but obviously the signs are good for now, so you kind of have to go off that. And I think obviously the fact he's kind of played his whole career in the Premier League is like he's coming from a different league where maybe he's untested, that obviously goes for him as well. But we
Yeah.
have seen a lot of good players come from other leagues. So yeah.
Do you think the manager also? This is kind of a follow up question, and from stuff we saw, and I thought we were going to have a until the story was out there. I thought we were going to talk mainly about a different point. Do you think that the kind of uncertainty over head coach could be a factor? That the story that came out this morning was going to be. I think the story that came out this morning was pretty much, or this afternoon, that only Areola is going to be in Carrick's way now. It looks like it's going to be
Hmm.
one of those. I don't know why the story has suddenly come out, but it looks like Areola. It might be that Areola's been apparently he's been discussing the Chelsea job. So I think
Hmm.
he's discussing the Chelsea job, but I think sensibly he's probably also seeing what other offers are available because the Chelsea job is like a 1 year job, really, isn't it? That tends to be what happens. And I think with that squad of players, and given that I think Man United, Arsenal, Liverpool, and City are all better than, and actually Aston Villa are all better than Chelsea. That's not the best job. So to make my questions shorter, do you think the uncertainty over Areola versus Carrick or potentially another option is going to be a factor with players? Because if you're Anderson, just say the offer comes in, you don't even know who the head coach is going to be at the moment.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it does have a factor. I think especially when you have these meetings with agents and recruitment staff, like ultimately as a player, as we talked about previously, the money is up there as a priority, and obviously for the agent as well, the money is probably the main priority to be honest. But the second thing is how am I going to fit into this team? How much game time am I going to get? What is my role to play? What is a system that I'll be asked to partake in? And if they're sitting there at the negotiation table, having to basically say, well, we don't actually know who the manager's going to be. It's a pretty weak negotiation at that point.
No,
Because
do you think like if you want to say about a game time though, at the moment there's literally only Kobe Mainu, isn't there? So
true, yeah, yeah.
he'd be okay. Do you think that if you're going to be trying to talk to him and say, look, don't go to City, you'll just be on the bench, like and showing pictures of who's that guy? I forget his name because he's never in the team, Phillips, and just
Oh
go,
yeah,
look
yeah.
at this guy. It feels a little like remember these people? They signed for City, they were going to be stars, but they didn't get to play. So do you think there's any concern about that? Because the age he's at, clearly he doesn't want to be sat on the bench. He's like one of the most uh, sought after people at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, I think there would be a bit of a concern. I think, as you mentioned, Phillips is a pretty good example of someone who I don't know. He did have some hype around him, and obviously he was playing for England in the Euros and stuff. But I feel like he's obviously an example of a player that has kind of made the move, secured some big money, but ultimately didn't end up fitting in at City, and then his career kind of has been on the wrong path from his point of view really since then. Um, but yeah, I think that is something that players do think about. To be honest, I think if he was told, I mean, as I mentioned, I think game time at United wouldn't be too much of a problem because of Casemiro leaving, and I don't know what's going to happen with Agate.
I
But
think Agati is gone. Like, I'll just say this
mm,
and say this. There will be a corner show on the weekend, Sebastian. If you want to get involved in that one, there will be one after the Liverpool match as well. Just to join the people that are tuned in, we're not saying. I know they got lucky with some deals with some news in the past, Hasib. So, and we're not saying that this is like categorically correct. Yeah, sorry, Kieran.
no, no, just going to finish off by saying that I think players do think about game time and things because ultimately, if you're not playing games, you're going to end up in a situation where you're going to get that opportunity eventually, maybe in a Carabao Cup fixture or as a sub appearance in the Premier League, but you're not going to be ready. You might be rusty because you've not played games, and all of a sudden that injuries can come into it, and also your own form, kind of the momentum of playing week in week out really helps in terms of getting that consistency of performance. So it's always difficult for players when they're not getting many minutes and they're having to play bit part in games across a whole
It's sort of like
season.
I think it was frustrating for us this season because we didn't have a lot of games. I'll just go for a few of the comments. One is like, how many decent transfers do you think United will make in the window? Is from RK. I mean, hopefully all the transfers make it decent, but I think your point about numbers is valid as well. I'm saying at least five. I saw one say, can you start doing watch alongs where you speak? We did. Okay, there was a watch along for the last match where Helgi was doing the watch along as well. So yeah, okay, there was one, and there should be one for the Liverpool game. But because I'm setting up the post match stream as well, because we're doing a watch along plus a post match, so there will be a watch along, but at the moment it's going to be different guests on doing the watch along, and then I'll be on it full time. Um, yeah, Cake says he wished Casemiro signed a 1 year extension, and he said he felt. I'm glad you added the sad bit after that. He said, but he felt dead sad after he saw him kissing the badge. I think someone must have been pushing out some sort of story because, weirdly, my dad messaged me yesterday and asked me if Casemiro had signed a 1 year extension, and I was like, I'm pretty sure he's like agreed to go to Miami. So I don't know where you saw that. I don't know where you're looking for information, but no, that's not going to happen, is it?
Mm, yeah, yeah, probably not.
Would you keep him for 1 more year, or would you go? Because I do like Casemiro, but I think you would have to go. Well, United probably looking with like 2 games a week. We'd have to be looking at trying to get trying to
Yeah.
get what you call it, trying to get
Some support for him.
like progression and moving on that sort of
Mm.
thing. But yeah, if you want, you can throw some numbers out there, Kieran, with positions. This is kind of like a starting point.
Well, I think 3-7-1. I mean, yeah, it's interesting that I think in terms of positions that I would look to strengthen, I may throw in like fullback as well, because I think that whilst I think someone like Luke Shaw has been a good servant for the club. Played for 11 years, 10, 11 years, something like that. Maybe even longer than that actually. I just feel like at some point we do need to look to move on. I don't necessarily think in terms of making that next step up. I think we do need to look for potential other options. Um, I think obviously we brought Dorgu in as well, and with injuries and things, we haven't seen as much as we'd want from him. And he's shown some good signs, shown some not good signs. But I do think potentially fullback would be another position that I'd add into the mix. I think there were some reports that centre back, we were happy with centre backs. I'm pretty sure there was some sort of story that
Yeah,
came out
I
that
think we're
said,
happy with centre backs. I'm not as happy as Manchester United are
yeah,
officially with centre backs. I feel a bit concerned that the well, I feel a bit concerned that he's actually that we actually need some sort of cover with this one as well.
yeah. No,
Is this like I would say? Is it true that is he going to Miami? I'm sure I read it somewhere.
um, well, I mean, I've heard people talking about Miami,
I thought
but
Casemiro had agreed a deal, so I don't know if this is.
it
I
might
thought he'd
be.
agreed to go somewhere. I'm sure it was like, unless I dreamed it, which seems like a bit bizarre. I'm sure I like read that he'd gone to Miami, but yeah, I don't know. But do you agree with the like the three centre midfielders? I think everybody agrees with, and left wing. Like, do you think we should replace fullbacks? It's quite tricky.
Yeah, I think those cover the main pain points. I'd say right now in terms of positions we need to strengthen. I think the midfield. It feels like every transfer window, the midfield's always the talking point with us. But I think the midfield definitely needs a bit of a revamp, especially with Casemiro leaving. Um, I mean, to be honest, it's going to be difficult to bring someone in that's going to replicate the output he's had this season. To be fair, 9 Premier League goals, but his overall play has been very good.
No,
But you know,
it's kind of crazy, isn't it? That Casemiro's goal scoring for the position on the pitch. I think it's somewhat of a record for his position. Like, I think it probably is league leading because it's like the same goals as Sesko. It's really outstanding. I think someone like if you go back to the 90s, I believe like Steve Bruce had one season where he scored a lot of goals. But no, for like a non-striker or a player that's supposed to be more defensive minded, really, really good. Like Cake saying, 9 goals for Casemiro is crazy. And the thing is, they're all really good goals, and they're generally they're very vital goals as well. And we
mm.
got no European football, so you could be talking about 15 goals if we had all these other competitions. Are you good for some questions, Kieran? There's like quite a few questions in the chat.
Oh yeah, no, it should be fine. Yeah, yeah.
A question from Bilal is like, will Dorgu play for the end of the season? Do you think? I mean, I'm going to just say quickly. I'm hoping he plays against Liverpool in some sort of kind of like facility.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I guess we don't know the 100% the extent of his injury recovery, but I would say he may feature towards the back end of the season. Thing is, we don't have any reason in terms of like it's not like we're resting any players for any big finals or anything. So, I think there will be rotation, but um, I would like to see Dorger again just because I thought there was a period where he was actually picking up a bit of form. I think when he first came into the club, I think not that he was bad, but that he wasn't at maybe his free flowing best. I felt like before
He
he
kind
got
of
the
came into his
injury,
own, didn't he?
yeah,
People were calling him Ballon d'Orgu just before he got injured,
yeah, yeah,
and I was just like, I think we were thinking about the Arsenal goal, and also I'd say the Arsenal goal was definitely like a highlight from him because it's a brilliant strike, but also the finish against City. So he scored goals against our two biggest rivals. He seemed to hit form. I can't remember if he got in. Did he get injured in the Arsenal game? Was it that game that he went off?
it might have been actually, yeah, yeah, it could have been that one. I can't fully
It kind of
remember.
like that was at the peak of like how he was playing. So that's why it's a bit frustrating.
Mm. Yeah, that's the thing. I think like that's the kind of frustration with him in terms of, um, yeah, that's frustration. Like he was someone who, as you mentioned before, his injury was starting to come into his own. But as you know, obviously Gaz has said he was on the bench last game. The fact that he is very, very close to a return, I feel like we will see him, and it'll be nice for him to get a few minutes on the pitch. I suppose, unless I'm being an idiot, I think Switzerland have qualified for the World Cup. People can let me know if I'm being an idiot if they haven't, but I'm pretty sure they have. And you'd say Dorgu would probably be in their World Cup squad. So he'll want to get some minutes in his legs before that World Cup. Yeah, they have.
I
Yeah.
think it's
So
inevitable, isn't it? We've got like a
yeah,
few games left. If he's on the bench, he must be.
he'll at
Yeah, I
least get
think
some
the only
appearances.
issue is going to be the nature of the injury. I'll just go for a few comments as well because there's a lot of good comments tonight and questions. So I'll try and go through as many as I can. RK says Dorgu's superb athlete, was growing as a player. The injury was like at the worst possible time. He'd literally put in like some of his best performances. And Wizabet says, Kieran, say we've qualified for the Champions League. Like, what represents a good season next season regarding like European football, Premier League? So there's a loaded question, Kieran, because people will remember this. And if you say it's a good season, people will say in a year's time, Kieran, you said this would be a good season. So what do you
Um,
think?
yeah, no, it's a good question. I think for me, I think trophies are always for Manchester United. I think trophies are not only the currency of football, but ultimately, what we should aim towards at the start of every season.
What's realistic, do you think?
I
Like we're in
think,
the Champions
yeah,
League, that feels unrealistic, but what's
yeah,
domestic or
I think realistically, I think again in terms of winning a trophy, we're probably looking at an FA Cup or League Cup. Um, I think a run in the Champions League is not impossible because I think, obviously, depending on who you draw, but also I think if we can bring in a few more players in the summer and they really do hit the ground running and gel into the team, I don't think, I think we're not at the level of PSG or Bayern, to be honest. When watching them the other night, I just think we're not at that level at all. But I think we could potentially put a run together to the kind of, quarterfinal, semi-finals and that would be kind of if everything's gels. I don't think we're making the final, and I think there's too many teams in the Champions League that are still a level above us at the moment. But
how important is
you know,
like say to bring it back to like the transfer talk, how critical is this window with like if Manchester United like say do you like a lot of people have said in the chat today that Anderson is head and shoulders above some other targets. Do you think United see this the same? Because I know when we see things in the media and we see stories saying this guy's the top target, and I think a lot of us look at it and go, well, yeah, but if we don't get him, there's going to be other players that might do a similar job. If United missed out on Anderson, would you be thinking, okay, we're going to struggle to get someone as good, or do you think actually there's probably a lot of other players that will do an effective job?
I wouldn't be panicking as much as I'd be disappointed because I think he's a very good player. I wouldn't be hitting the panic button and saying, "Oh, we've missed out on him. We may as well cancel next season because we're not going to do anything." I think there's a lot of other targets out there that would do a good job for us, and you
What
don't
did you like?
necessarily.
Can I
Yeah,
just
go on.
ask you another question? What did you like about Tonali? Because Tonali, when I was talking about him recently, there's definitely people that are not keen. I think one of the things they don't like, or they say, is like consistency, possibly, but maybe his motivations for leaving might be questionable.
Yeah, I mean, I think listen, yeah, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I think for me, I do think that when he goes forward, he can create opportunities. He's threatening. He's obviously got a very good shot on him as well. Um, he's got that burst of pace, so he's able to make those kind of runs from deep in midfield. And I think creatively, I think he's a really really good player. Defensively would be the thing that I'd be maybe a little bit um, worried about in terms of like I wouldn't necessarily associate him with being the sort of player that would I don't know be yeah. I think the defensive side of his game I wouldn't necessarily be putting up there in terms of his abilities, but he's obviously a tenacious midfielder who likes to try and win the ball back. But yeah, that'd be the only thing, maybe the defensive side of his game. But I think going forward, I think the pace he has a good engine on him. He's got a good shot on him, and I think when he plays and when he's on song, I think Newcastle look a much better team, especially going forward. Obviously, I do get the argument about his consistency because I think if he was more consistent, then Newcastle will be in a better place. But I still think there's definitely a player in there that if you can get that consistency out of him, I think he would be a major asset for us. So I like Tonali. I do think he has got a few shortcomings, as people have mentioned, but I still would take the gamble on him if say we didn't get an Anderson. I'd still like to go in for Tonali, to be honest, but we'll see what happens.
Cake saying, I'll go for some comments as well. Cake says, I really enjoyed the FA Cup. So it's not what it was now. There's no replays of semi-finals. I think there's been some I know we've not been in it much this season, but there's actually been some really good games, like some late drama, some like lower league teams really stepping up. And Gaz says every window is critical. It feels a bit like we got to kind of got to do a better window as well. And yeah, Cake's saying don't panic, Kieran. Cake's already panicking about everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, so with Tonali, so some praise for Tonali in the chat saying engine gets about the pitch, can carry the ball. And they're saying that Arcade compares him to Pirlo with a bit more grit. That is like I think comparing to Pirlo, if you watch Pirlo, that's quite high praise as well. Like
Yeah.
Pirlo's a quality player. I'm looking to see if there's any, because whenever I talk about player, there will be like a mix of pros and cons as well. Yari says Anderson price is 150 million now. That Forest is winning over Villa. Has Anderson scored? Anderson is in my fantasy football team actually because he tends to pick up points because he always seems to contribute something, whether it's like good performances or the odd goal, the assist. Yeah, 41 likes. We could hit. Can we hit 50? Because Kieran's coming on. Like this is like the first kind of news stream Kieran's done for about, I don't know. Is it like 5 months maybe? Or
Yeah, it must be up there. To be fair, yeah, long time.
Sebastian says yeah, this is Kieran. Sebastian, if you like, Kieran has been someone I've known for probably about 5 years, at least 5 years. But wasn't available till recently. I did actually say Kieran recently. I did say to people that are new, I said make sure you tune in on this day because Kieran's coming on. It'll be good. So you haven't disappointed some of the people in the chat. Kawin is saying that he feels that Tonali's poor in the air. I think Tonali, if you compare Tonali with too many, that's the one aspect where too many's kind of like a bit. I was going to say head and shoulders in the air, but you know what I mean. He's actually got better stats. So too many. How tall is Tonali? Because too many's like 6'2", isn't he? Quite well built.
Yeah, I think Tonali's about a similar height. I thought he was about 6 foot. Yeah, so well, 181 meters. What's that? I don't know my conversion.
Would you say one meter? Well, you're like a giant, aren't you? Like 6'6".
Yeah,
I'm about
I'm a
one.
bit taller than that.
I think I'm about 184. So I think it's something like that. Is that nearly six, like 6'1" or something? So I think it's
yeah. So this is saying he's about 6 foot. Yeah. So it's
okay.
not
So
not small.
I think that's probably similar. Casemiro must be sort of similar. And
Yeah.
no, there was definitely because when we started getting bullied by teams, people started looking at how tall the players were. And I think that when I've been talking about midfield players, there's quite a lot of interest in how tall they are. And I think when I saw too many was 6'2", I was like, okay, right. There seems to be not many weaknesses regarding too many as a signing. And I was saying, will Tonali leave Newcastle? I mean, is Walter Maida wants to like get out of the club? Does he?
I don't know. I don't know what's going on at Newcastle at the moment. Everything's going wrong.
Yeah, just to show, doesn't it? I think there's a problem in Newcastle that once they've hey, come on, Bilal. Like Owen's not been on this channel for a long time.
To be fair, I've heard it all before. I think he needs to get back on himself.
For people that don't know, Owen is twin of like Kieran, so it looks quite similar. So if Owen comes on, some people that maybe have been watching on it, maybe if you're watching on a mobile phone, you can't see the difference quite so much. But
true, actually, yeah. Or if it lags and it kind of goes grainy. look like the same.
Yeah, no, well,
Yeah.
Michael Owen. No, Michael Owen's not allowed on this channel because he might talk nonsense, possibly. No, we have to have some sort of standard, Sebastian. We can't get anyone on. Like Michael Owen's definitely not allowed. Next, you'll be saying like get Keown on, like the most biased pundit I think I've ever seen. Michael Keown. What's to say? Keown may as well wear a T-shirt that says "I hate Manchester United," because whenever he talks, if Man United win, Martin Keown struggles to say anything positive. I think he'll just criticize the other team for letting Man United win. But it's just really that I'm biased, but I mean he's like incredibly biased. Question from Stephanie. You said about an hour, Kieran. Let me know if you need to head off. There's just been a lot of questions tonight.
Yeah. Lewis Hall. I mean, Lewis Hall. Actually, I like him as well. I think did he come through? Am I wrong to say he came through at Chelsea, or am I making that up? But he was. I think whenever he plays us, he's always someone I look at, and is someone who looks like, especially for the future, a really good option. But again, I feel like there'll be other clubs going after him, so we'll see. But I think he's someone that people should keep an eye out. Oh yeah, he did play for Chelsea. Okay, right, fair enough.
Yeah. Everyone's played for Chelsea at some point, I think. It's safe. So Newcastle spent 75 million on Watermaid. Possibly that was the same as that. That's maybe slightly more than Sesko. But Eddie's playing him as an attacking midfielder when he's a striker. I mean, I thought his goals had dried up a little bit, which kind of makes a bit of sense. That one. Keown, yeah, Keown could come on with his camera off, couldn't he? I wish Roy Keane had like hit him when he did that, but again, Roy Keane would have got suspended. So, now looking at the comments, say people got any general questions for Kieran, because if we keep Kieran a long time, we might struggle to get him back on. So get the questions in if you got some questions about this one. Do you think we're going to see, like, on the spot, Kieran? Do you think we're going to see any sort of confirmation of this story in the next 24 hours? Is there going to be any follow up, or is this going to be like a one off?
I don't think we're going to get any confirmation of it like in the next kind of like day or two. I think potentially, if we're looking at kind of a few weeks down the line, I always feel like with these sorts of stories, it's like end of the season, you then find that things start to progress a bit more. But obviously with the World Cup coming as well, like that might affect it. But yeah, I think this will kind of continue to be up in the air a bit. But I don't think we're going to get any. I don't think we're going to get any kind of immediate confirmation from other journalists. But we've seen before surprises happen, so you never know. But I'm going to say no on that one. I think it's going to be a bit later down the line.
Would this be a massive surprise, do you think?
I think Anderson leaving Forest wouldn't be a surprise. I think most people believe that he is going to leave Forest, but I think we've obviously been linked to him for a while as well. But I think especially when the season is still going on, and obviously Forest's, where their European situation hasn't been decided because they're still in their European competition. So, if it was to come out that we've submitted a bid for him and that we're really going after him, maybe it'd be a little bit of a surprise that we're acting this early and we're being this proactive about it. But I think I don't think it'd be a surprise that we're going for him. But it feels like this is the sort of deal that in the past we would leave till like right at the end of the transfer window and we'd just about get over the line. So I think the surprise would be if us being proactive, to be honest, if anything.
No, it would be surprising, wouldn't it? It's something we don't normally do.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, I've got a general question for you, Kieran, because I read the chat every single day, and loads of people post things, and there's genuinely going to be a lot of negativity regarding Manchester United and suspicion of the transfer window. And a couple of the questions were like, one person said, how much money are we going to spend? Also, welcome Ducks to the chat as
Mm.
well. Welcome to people that just tuned in. And Torrin says Man United and Ineos are probably going to wait for Champions League qualification before any sort of transfer business, because obviously it's the same thing, isn't it? Like if Manchester United and City both offer Anderson a deal, then is Pep going to stay? Is Carrick going to stay? Is is something dramatic going to happen? And Manchester United going to some? I don't think we can suddenly lose. We're not going to lose 4 games in a row. I don't think after the season we've seen, and I don't think that we're going to get every other team below us winning all their games.
Yeah, no, I think we should be okay for Champions League football now, to be honest. And if we're not, then yeah, that would be a collapse of epic proportions, to be honest. One that I think I don't know if it's been dramatically saying we'd struggle to recover, because I think we would recover, but it would be a massive psychological blow if that happened. But I think we're all right for Champions League, and I think it's obviously massive, as we talked about, for our prospects, really, in terms of who we bring in, who we maybe can't bring in. But I think as a player, like, you do want to have that certainty of the project that you're being presented with. And
Do you think we've got a good project? Also, I've got one thing to say. Don't look at the live chat, Kieran, because I'll close the poll. I want you to guess
oh, yeah, I'll close it. Yeah.
guess what the poll result is regarding where Anderson goes, because sometimes I can't guess. I kind of like thought there would be definitely a winner, but I don't know what the percentages are. Have we got a good project? Do you think? Like, have we got a project that and Bremo thought we did? I think Benjamin Sesko thought we did. Cunha thought we did. Like, do you think we have got one?
Yeah, no, I think we do. I think we've been in this position a few times before, in fairness, where, like, we've kind of, like, under Ollie, for example, we finished in those Champions League spots, and we thought if we get a few more players in the summer, we can become a really good team, and then it never quite happened. But I do think that if you look at the base team that we're building, I think it's, especially if we can keep Fernandez as well. I think I get the feeling he wants to stay, but I think he's a big he's a key piece of the puzzle, really. I think if Fernandez stays this summer, then I think a lot of players will look at that and go, well, we've got someone who's obviously in great form, playing probably the best football we've seen at United in Bruno Fernandez. He's wanting to stay. He's wanting to continue to progress the club forward. I think that sends a message to not only the players currently at the club, but the players who we might be looking to bring in, that, there are players who are currently at the club that believe in the project. So I think that's a big thing, to see which players decide to stay on for next summer as well. But I do think we've got a good project. Yeah.
If you look at our team, I think we bought a better goalkeeper than Man City did last season. I think we
Mm.
got potentially better younger centre backs for the future, and that we got at the club. So I think that you could look at City and say they've got some good players, but Haaland isn't going to stay there every single season. He might leave he might leave at some point, and then they'll have to try and replace him. I think United just need to build a good team, and then look at just make sure you're there when other teams drop off or fall apart, or build a team that's going to progress. I think we've got some of the pieces in there. I think we could potentially have one of the better goalkeepers over the next few years, hopefully. So
Mm.
it's not. I don't think it's the worst case scenario. I know people look at it and say we're always trying to catch up, but we are trying to catch up. But I don't think you catch up by buying a 30-year-old you need to replace in a few years' time. You catch up by buying people like Yoro as well. Welcome in. Good to see you in the chat. So there's been quite a few questions. So we're going to be live for another 10 minutes, and then we'll have probably like grilled Kieran enough and found a lot. I think the reason why people talk about Manchester United as a project is it's almost like they try to define like 2028 as maybe when everything comes to fruition and we start seeing the benefit of some of these longer term deals. And I think when you look at that, you think of like a Dorgu signing, a Yoro, and Aiden Heaven signing, that in 4 years' time, they'll look like good signings. Whereas if we're signing Anderson, he's going to be close to being there already, isn't he? And I think Belieber and other players will be. So I think it makes a lot of sense as well that, but again, you kind of have to try and be as good as possible. Real Talk Podcast 2025. Good to see you. Is this bath time or is this Tyrone? But good to see whichever one it is as well. So I appreciate that. one extra subscriber as well. So thank you for that. I'm gradually trying to reconnect with people. And be up to Mr. B. Good to see you in the conversation as well. Have you got any questions, like general thoughts, Kieran? Because a lot of people think the transfer window is going to be like pretty critical, and you're kind of quite optimistic. I know people are kind of a bit skeptical about, what are we going to miss out on top targets, but I feel like it's going to be quite difficult to miss out on a lot of targets.
Yeah, I think, yeah, in terms of just thoughts and things like that, I think it's always feels kind of early to be talking about, um, not necessarily talking about transfers, but talking about, um, how many players we're going to get, or how much we're going to spend. But at the same time, I think, my hope is that we are doing preparation behind the scenes, and I'm sure that, well, at least I hope so. But I feel like throughout the season, there is going to be, a lot of kind of stuff going on behind the scenes in terms of recruitment strategies and plans for which positions we need to recruit for, and that's what I really hope has happened behind the scenes. And I think we just have to trust in their judgment. I think if you look at the players we signed last summer, I think it's difficult to argue that either of the four players we brought in, have done badly. You could argue maybe some of them haven't
I think
reached the
they've been.
heights, but
I think
I
they've
think they've
got
been good
4 out of 4.
signings. Yeah, I think
Honestly,
they've been good signings ultimately. I think Mbumo, obviously, his recent form hasn't been great, but when he first was brought in, he was scoring goals for fun, probably one of the most important players. Cunha took a little bit of time to get up to speed, but actually, again, when he did, he showed really good form. Sesko's
yeah,
looking good right now, and obviously Lamans. You could argue
yeah.
that he was the best out of all of them, to be honest, in
We're
terms of
fourth in the.
consistency.
Sorry, we're third in the league. I was going to say that Kieran's
Mm.
like a top guest, Kawin. So also, Kawin, thank you for joining the calling show. We're trying to organise one for Sunday night as well. You're welcome to come on and get involved. I just want to say, thank you for the feedback as well, particularly positive feedback from On the Edge officials. So thank you for that. Cakes has got worried that we'll sign mostly filler players to beef the squad up. I don't think we're linked to filler players, to be honest. I think the players we're talking about, if we talk about cheaper options, I think Hayden Hackney can play a decent role. I think João Gomez would certainly play significant roles as well. I think the cheaper players are still quite well thought out, well scouted, sensible options for a squad that needs to compete on multiple competitions next season. So I think there's lots to be done, but there's definitely lots of good targets out there. I think one of the things that I would mention with you, Kieran, is like when you're talking about the signings, that Lamans has pretty much had good form. I think since the first day he played, we got a clean sheet, we got a win, and things kind of kicked on in the right direction generally from then. Cunha, he's got such a great attitude. He's loved by the fans. He does loads of like things which we missed out on. Like the sort of holding up the ball, causing problems for the other team. And then Buemo, you got energy and enthusiasm, and Sesko. I think they've all got the right personality. They all genuinely want to win, and they all seem to be unfazed by the challenge of representing Manchester United. They seem to have all. It's taken different. It's been difficult sometimes, but you can always see that you're going to get 100% on the pitch. Like I don't think we'll
Mm.
watch a game where Cunha doesn't play with like at least 100% effort and try and win the game, and Mbeumo as well. Do you remember when we were talking about Cunha when we were signing him, and there was some question marks over his attitude or temperament?
Mm.
I don't know what people were saying because at Manchester United, I can't think of Cunha getting much issues in terms of like like getting many cards, many bookings, getting involved in anything like that. I think his attitude's been really good. I think that the temperament's been really good. The effort and the endeavour's been there, and I think we've got the quality. Like, and we've seen some fantastic goals from Cunha. So I think there's always a bit of trepidation over certain signings, isn't there? And people would look at him. Do you remember when people were saying, or there were some stats saying that Cunha spends a lot of time walking and he's got a bad attitude? And I was thinking, well, that's not that's just rubbish, isn't it? He's been a really good signing.
Yeah, and I think not only his temperament in terms of being tenacious, obviously working really hard for the team, but also his ability to deal with the pressures of playing for Manchester United. I think that's the thing that a lot of people questioned. Even though he's a big personality at Wolves, I think
Yeah,
there's always that
famously.
worry that
So
ultimately these players might not be able to hack it when all the pressure, all the media, the scrutiny is on you. But Cunha has taken to it like a duck to water. I think he has that natural personality. So that's another thing. Not only his work rate, but also
he's got a good goal celebration, hasn't he?
yeah,
And
yeah,
he's got a
he's
good goal celebration that actually, I think it gets the crowd. It's quite fun, isn't it? I think
mm,
with Cunha, he enjoys his football, and yeah.
yeah. I mean, hopefully we see it more and more, to be honest. But yeah.
Okay, I've not had any messages yet, Sebastian, but I'll look out for that one. If you want to like send them links to Discord or Twitter, that's perfect. So we've got another few minutes. We're going to wrap up at 10 p.m. So if you've got some questions for Kieran as well. So Yari says another exciting winger. I did see this. Do you know what? When I saw this
Mm.
story, but my first reaction, Kieran, it could be bad, but my first reaction was he's playing for Ajax, and I've kind of been stung by players playing for Ajax. It's nothing against the league, but I just think make sure you're scouted very thoroughly because I'm a bit worried about players looking good for certain clubs. I mean, Ajax are definitely a club that have very good organisation, and it's almost like every individual in the team actually looks better than they are. But I would just be a little bit
Yeah, I
not
mean,
skeptical, but a little bit.
yeah, I can't say a huge amount because I've not fully watched him play, but I saw a lot of speculation around him recently, and obviously a lot of people talking about his name, but yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know too much about him, but yeah,
Can I throw some quick questions at you, Kieran? Because I know we've only got a few minutes. That
yeah, go on, go
um,
on.
on the edge has got like players that you listed as well, like Wharton. And do you think that with this as well that there seems to be less getting there quickly, like Elliot Anderson, Wharton, Alex Scott? I think Wharton linked to other clubs as well. How much like quickly? How keen would you be, and how much would you pay for Wharton? He's definitely a 50-50 player that I know that you like him.
Hmm.
I think it's Berber, who's in the chat quite a lot, likes him. Cody doesn't like him too much, but
Yeah, I think for Wharton, I think it's not going to be that far away from Anderson. I think probably you're looking at kind of in the
I think he
70
might be.
million mark.
I think he might be cheaper actually. There was something apparently. I don't want to get your hopes up, Kieran, but I heard that there was an agreement which makes me a bit skeptical. But apparently, there's an agreement he can go for about 60 to 65, or a reasonable price, obviously quite a lot, based on staying at Palace and then going this season. So
Yeah, no, I mean that would be about the price I'd expect. To be fair, about 60-65 million. I think obviously a lot of that is kind of on his potential, but from what he's shown, again, he's someone who has shown his ability in the Premier League for a few seasons now. Obviously for England as well, I think he's had some good performances. So it'll be interesting to see whether he
yeah,
he goes to the World Cup and whether he kind of plays a part or not. But I think that's not a bad price at all for Wharton. To be fair, I think I would be prepared to pay that amount of money for me. So yeah, I think it'd be a good signing. But as I said, I wouldn't put him above Anderson or a Tonali maybe. But Wharton definitely is someone who, whichever club does end up getting him, because I don't think he's going to stay at Palace for his whole career. Whichever club
yeah.
does end up getting him, I think will get
I'll
a
just
diamond
say
of a player.
Mizunan quoted bid is unknown at the moment. So if there's developments, we're going to be doing live streams regularly. So I've got to go through very quick questions because I did say to Kieran that we finish at 10, and I can't keep adding extra Fergie time on for this. So Cunha, good in game management. Yeah, honestly, one of my favorite
Mm.
players. Cunha's pure shithousery is class. I'm here for it. Says on the edge. Yeah, to be honest, that you're all saying exactly the sort of thing that Cunha was one of my favorite players before we signed him. So when you look at that, sometimes that last summer's transfer window, I was probably a bit over enthusiastic about it. I think for people that know me because we signed Cunha, and I genuinely really Cunha was like one of my favorite players, like non-Man United players in the league, and that's kind of why I was looking at this one as well. Um, saying, yeah, I think go for a few others as well.
Heaven, yeah.
Just don't see it with
Not quite.
Wharton. Okay, Kieran, I often make a case for players I really like, and yeah, we'll try and let's see, where is it? So, make a case for Stephanie. Okay, I don't try to influence people, but
Mm.
I've talked up a few other players. So, sell it to Stephanie. Sell the dream of Adam Wharton playing for Man United. Well, what would it bring?
I think he's someone who will bring immense control in the midfield. I think he's got good ability defensively, but I think again he's someone who is very very good on the ball. Would be good in terms of helping us keep the ball more, have better ball retention. I think obviously his goal scoring ability would be the thing that maybe lets him down a little bit, but I think in terms of a player to help you control games of football, I think he's up there with the best targets we could go for. So that's my thing with him. I think whenever I've seen him play, I think his calmness on the ball, just technically a very good player, and I really think that to raise our technical level is really important in our midfield. So that's what I'd say. But I do think there's other targets out there. I'm not saying that Wharton's my favourite. I still would probably go for Anderson over Wharton, but I think Wharton's a decent player, and I think technically he's one of the best players on that list, in my opinion. So that's what I'd say.
There you go, Stephanie. So, what more could you want? Like, there's so many good things that he can do. And Jules is saying, so yeah, night, Sebastian. Thanks for tuning in. I know like it's crazy, like the time difference with some people watching as well. So Wharton can break the play, break the lines. He might be only 60 million. I say only 60 million. It might be 65 million, but no, it's significant money. But Kieran, I've got to say massive thanks. Let me just move this out of the way. So if I can move this, see, I'm just hopefully we don't disappear from the stream. So let me just remove the story. There you go. Let's go to like a different view so that people can see like it's RDW, but it's Kieran. He's just put it's just to confuse matters. I thought your name would be there, and everyone would go, "Okay, so that's how it's spelled." But
Oh
never
no,
mind.
so I can change that. I don't know if I can change that now, but it is Kieran, but I can change it, can't I? But it's spelled that way. I don't know if that's on now.
There you
Yeah,
go.
so it's not quite KIE spelled like the kind of Irish way, but yeah,
Well, that's quite good for an Irish name because quite often Irish names have about five letters that are silent, and
yeah,
I just have no idea how it's pronounced.
mm.
But
Yeah, it happens like that
Kieran,
sometimes.
no, big thanks for coming on tonight. Always great to chat to you. I think people that don't know you before tonight won't have realized that you were on about 4 nights a week for about 2 years. Really, really instrumental in building up Red Devil United back in the day. And hopefully it feels a bit like Marquis went to Barcelona, then came back to Manchester United. It feels like you've come back to Manchester United now. And hopefully we can get you on a lot more as well. And say, yeah, I saw it. Yeah, exactly. But with like a PH and like
Yeah,
another silent letter, because I've
literally.
seen Irish names and sometimes the Irish name looks like it's like a Greek name, and when you pronounce it, my wife would go, no, actually, it's just this. You go, well, why have they got like so many letters in it if it's like one syllable? Makes
Yeah,
no
it's
sense.
just the language. But
Yeah,
it makes it
no,
unique.
yeah, like Welsh do the same thing where
Mm.
why have a small amount of letters when 10 can do the job of two? Just put them in there. Right, but be it to you, Kieran. We are going to wrap up now, and we will be live hopefully tomorrow 9 a.m. with hopefully maybe like a few different stories. There's probably going to be a bit of Areola chat, probably some transfer stuff as well, and we might look into the Ajax winger if that story emerges. But now, be up to you, Kieran. Sorry for keeping you for so long, but you're
No
too good
worries.
a guest. That's the only problem. Like you're too good a guest, so we have to keep you on.
You're
And
too
like
kind.
Sebastian's
Too
tried
kind.
to leave 3 times, but he can't. But so we'll have to wrap up so Sebastian can get some sleep. No, but thanks, you guys, and we'll be back live tomorrow. Tomorrow it'll be a bit earlier, and we do have a couple of guests on. We have Dora coming on, and we also have Dylan. Right, I nearly forgot that, but we have Dylan and we have Dora. So we're going for D's tomorrow, C's tonight, bizarrely.
It works
Cheers,
out.
guys. Tune in on Saturday when we find someone with E to come on the show. Until then, guys, have a great rest of your night, and we'll be back tomorrow.